all, welcome to yet another live session of Narayana IAS Academy. So this is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis, and for today's discussion we've picked up a number of articles from The Hindu. Not that we've actually ignored the Indian Express, but comparatively we felt that these three news are more relevant and are more important for the UPSC CSE examination. So now let us actually have a look at the topics that we'll be discussing in detail today, okay? Of course, the first topic, that is scuttling people's right to information. So this particular article, we've actually taken it for the mains examination, where we'll be discussing in detail about what is right to information, what is the philosophy behind right to information, the constitutional provision, the Supreme Court judgments, as well as what does the Right to Information Act of 2005 actually entail, what was the amendment that was made in 2019, and so on, and what are the challenges that the RTI actually faces with respect to that of the implementation from the part of the government is what we'll be discussing in the first article, which reads scuttling people's right to information. Okay, that has been picked up from page number 7 of The Hindu. Moving on, the second article for the day is what is Wayanad's new X-band radar. So, you know, of late there has been a lot of technological advancements and India has been performing comparatively or relatively well to its performance in the previous years. And we will look into what has been the necessity for the Ministry of Earth Sciences giving a nod for installation of this X-band radar. For that, we will be discussing in detail about what is the radar system, what is this X-band radar. We'll also look into other concepts of what is Doppler effect, how does it function, etc. Because this actually forms, you know, a part of current affairs as well as your conceptual clarity in the basic science part. Okay. Now moving forward, the third article that we'll be discussing for the day is who gets the preferred symbol when there are two factions in a recognized political party. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about, what are unrecognized political parties, what are recognized political parties, and for example, if there is a recognized political party, what is the eligibility criteria for a party to become a recognized political party? What are the different types? And in terms of a split, or if there are two factions in a recognized political party, which particular political party will actually inherit the symbol before the faction? All these things we'll actually understand with respect to this particular article. Okay, so having looked at what are these particular topics, now let us quickly get into the discussion. Okay, 1 minute. Can you just move this a little bit this side? Yeah, fine. So yes, this is the first article that we'll be discussing. Okay, so this article discusses about scuttling people's right to information. As I already told you, in this particular article, we will be discussing certain very important concepts. Okay, so what are the important concepts? First, we'll understand what is right to information. In the next one, we'll actually read about or discuss about the philosophy behind this particular right to information. What are the international conventions with respect to this particular right to information, and with respect to that of the Indian Constitution, from which provision do we actually draw it from, whether it is Article 19 clause 1 clause A, which talks about freedom of speech and expression, or whether it is Article 21 right to life with dignity. So this is what we'll be discussing in this. And moving forward, we'll be discussing about various Supreme Court judgments as well as the RTI Act of 2005, its amendment in 2019, and also finally we'll discuss about what are the challenges that actually face this particular legislation in India. Okay, so what are the hurdles that the government actually faces in implementing the same? So this is what we'll be discussing in this particular article. Now moving forward, yeah. So here, as I already told you, we'll be discussing about right to information, the RTI Act of 2005, the Amendment Act, the Official Secrets Act. That is, before the RTI Act of 2005 was implemented, we had Official Secrets Act, okay, which actually enables or holds the government accountability and transparency. So we'll be discussing about that, as well as fundamental rights, as Article 19 and 21 are fundamental rights. And finally, if we see the relevance or the syllabus from which this particular article can be taken is from polity of the prelim section, and for the mains perspective it is under GS paper 2, that is quasi judicial bodies, transparency and accountability. So here you need to also know about the information commission as well as the criteria for a particular person to be elected as the information commissioner as well as the subordinates. Okay, so this is what we'll be discussing here. So any topic that we actually pick up for discussion definitely is based on a previous year question. Okay, so you have this particular topic of Representation of People's Act in your syllabus. Okay, so this is what it is. There is a view that the Official Secrets Act is an obstacle to the implementation of the RTI Act. Do you agree with this view? Discuss. Okay, so this has been a question that was asked in the mains examination in 2019. Now moving forward, let us understand what the article is discussing about. So here it says that the article discusses the challenges and the concerns that are surrounding the weakening of the Right to Information Act. Okay, so this particular act was actually implemented in order to hold the government accountable. Okay, in order to make sure that the activities or the functions performed by the government is actually transparent to the general public. In case the general public feels that there is opaqueness in the policy implementation and the functioning, what happens under this RTI, they can question as to what are the funds allocated, how is it has been allocated, etc. And however, it actually comes with reservations as in it has certain exemptions. In that case, we will look into whom all are the parties or the stakeholders onto whom this RTI actually applies, who are exempted from it, and what are the 2019 amendments that were brought here. So let us quickly get into understanding what is this particular news is discussing. So here if you see this particular piece of act, that is the RTI Act, has been a significant tool for promoting transparency as well as accountability in governance. This all of us know, right? Now moving forward, while RTI Act has played a very significant and successful role in exposing the cases of corruption, and it has also given access to critical information, what happens, it is currently facing a number of challenges with respect to administrative delays. The recent amendment that was actually brought, that is the 2019 amendment that was brought. What is an amendment? Any kind of change in the already existing provisions. Okay, that is called amendment. So the 2019 amendment that was brought, it actually gave more power to the central government in designing the salary, the allowances, the tenure of the information commissioners. Okay, so that actually was seen as taking away of the autonomy of this particular body. So that is what it is. So there were recent amendments and difficulties faced by those who are implementing it. Okay, now moving forward, let us see what do you mean by right to information. See, in our discussion, what we'll generally do is, first let us understand the entire topic in detail and then quickly run through whatever is written over here. Otherwise, if you directly focus on what is on the board, no, your your focus or the concentration will be diverted. You'll be looking more into the content than listening to what we are, what I am saying. So first I told you what is right to information, what is the Right to Information Act. So first let us discuss what is this particular concept of right to information. This is nothing but simple. In layman's term, it grants the citizens the ability to access any kind of information pertaining to the functioning of the government. So this actually empowers the citizens as active participants in a democracy, okay, rather than just being passive subjects and voting a particular party to power. It makes sure that the citizens feel contented as active participants in the democracy. So that is what is called as right to information. This actually ensures that there is open access to the working of the government's different bodies or the branches, that you say the legislature, the executive as well as the judicial branches. And philosophically, if you see the philosophical foundation of this right to information, this traces back to Aristotle. What did Aristotle believe? So this actually becomes when important when you write your ethics, when you write your essay, and when you write your GS2, that is governance paper. Okay, so what did Aristotle actually say? He believed that liberty and equality are the cornerstones of a democracy, and these cornerstones of democracy can be achieved only when citizens have unrestricted access to about how the government operates. So this is how the philosophy of right to information actually started. And so the availability of information plays a critical role in shaping an individual's personality, political, social identity, as well as in order to be aware of what are all the economic opportunities which is actually present. Okay, so this is what is right to information. Now let us see what is the kind of traction or the recognition that this particular right to information has in the international law. Firstly, you see the United Nations recognition is that the UN has recognized this right since 1946. Okay, even before India gained its independence, declaring that freedom of information is a fundamental human right. So here United Nations has said that it is a fundamental human right, and it is actually central to all the other freedoms that the United Nations upholds. There's nothing to understand more on this. You just need to know from where this actually evolved as a philosophy and what is the international recognition. Moving on, as per the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, very, very important, as per the provision, the right to information actually became legally binding right through its inclusion in Article 19 of this International Covenant of Civil as well as Political Rights. So these are some of the legislations that you must be aware of while quoting this. Now, with respect to the Indian Constitution, whether this particular right to information, see there are questions like this, whether right to vote is a constitutional right or not, whether it is a legal right or not, right to property, whether it is a fundamental right or not. And then here similarly, right to information, whether it is directly derived from one of the constitutional provisions or not, can be a possible question in your examination for your prelims. Okay, so here you need to know right to information is not explicitly mentioned anywhere in the Constitution. However, the Supreme Court has actually drawn inferences from Article 19 Clause 1, which is a fundamental right that actually upholds the freedom of speech and expression. And moving on from Article 21, it has actually inferred that right to information is a part of right to living with dignity. Okay, so this is what it is, and there have been a lot of Supreme Court judgments where, see, every topic in your polity has to be substantiated with best examples, cases, case laws, etc. Okay. So here, with respect to RTI Act, you just have to note it down that these are the different cases. Even if you don't remember the recent cases, you can quote these cases, okay, which will fetch you or give you an edge over the other aspirants. So over here, State of UP versus Raj Narayan 1975, where the Supreme Court held the right is actually implicit in the right to freedom of speech and expression that is mentioned under Article 19 of the Constitution. And again, in SP Gupta versus President of India 1982, the Supreme Court actually asserted that the right of the people to know about the public act and details of every transaction undertaken by the public functionary, okay, that is the government. And moving on, it said that People's Union, that is PUCL, People's Union for the Civil Liberties versus the Union of India case, the Supreme Court elevated the status of right to information to a human right, and it actually linked to Article 21 of the Constitution. So these are the various case laws that is associated with this particular right to information. Now moving on to understand what is this Right to Information Act of 2005. Okay, so the right to information is derived from, we know, the fundamental right, that is Article 19, freedom of speech and expression. This emphasizes that without access to the information, on how it actually functions, on how the government functions and how the other public institution functions, The citizens cannot form an informed opinion, and this particular act was amended in 2019. Now it is important to understand how different were the provisions in 2019 from the provisions that were there in 2005 with respect to tenure, with respect to the salary, the allowance as well as the pension. Okay, so now let us move forward in understanding that quickly. So if you see here, let me, yeah, so if you see here in 2005, the 2005 Act, here the Chief Information Commissioner and the Information Commissioners at central and the state levels will actually serve for a period of 5 years. But according to the 2019 bill, this particular tenure of 5 years will be decided by the central government. Now moving on with respect to that of the salary, the 2005 Act actually said that at the central level, the salary of the Chief Information Commissioner and Information Commissioners will be equivalent to the salary of Chief Election Commissioner and the Election Commissioners respectively. That is what they say is Information Commissioners and Chief Information Commissioners will withdraw or will draw an equal salary such as the Election Commissioners in India. Okay. At the state level, it will be equivalent salary of the election commissioners and chief secretary respectively. Whereas the 2019 bill says all the salaries, all the allowances as well as the other terms and conditions of service will again be determined by the central government, which again actually reduced the autonomy of this particular information commission. Okay. So here your takeaway is to understand about the Information Commission, why it was formed, what are the objectives, whether it's a constitutional body or a quasi judicial body, etc. Now moving forward, here we actually saw with respect to tenure, here we saw with respect to that of the salary. Now moving on, we will see with respect to that of deductions. Okay, at the time of appointment, the CIC, that is the Chief Information Commissioner, and ICs at both the central and the state levels are receiving pension or any other retirement benefits for the previous government service, their salaries will actually be reduced by an amount equal to that of the pension. Okay, so this actually talks about the deductions that is done. And the previous government service actually includes the central government, the state government, corporation established under a central or state law, or a company that is actually owned or controlled by central or state government. So here once again what are they saying is, at the time of appointment, if for example I am the chief election commissioner, at the time of appointment, whether I am a central election information commissioner or a state information commissioner, what happens if I am receiving any kind of pension from an already performing job, then what happens? What happens is their salaries will be reduced by an amount. For example, if I was a previous government servant and if I'm an ex-bureaucrat and if I'm actually receiving 50,000 as my pension, okay, and now if I'm appointed as the chief election commissioner, whether at the state or at the central level, so here what happens, my salary will be equivalent to the previously drawn pension, that is 50,000 rupees. That's what they are saying. This was according to the 2005 Act, but the amendment actually removes all these provisions. Okay, so these are the differences in the provisions between the 2019 as well as the 2005 Act. Now we will quickly understand the Act and the provisions of the RTI Act. Here the RTI Act and its rules, they define the format for requesting information. Okay, the rules actually says that what is the format, whether you need to give it in an undertaking, whether you need to fill a form, etc. And it also tells the time frame within which the information must be provided, also the method for delivering the information, the fee which is actually associated with applying, and also what are the exemptions for certain types of information that will not be disclosed. So these are the rules that are actually stated by the RTI. Next, these are the provisions, specific provisions like section 4, section 6, section 7. You can actually use them as buzzwords, but not that important. We'll just go through what does section 4 says. It says that there have to be public authorities to maintain their records properly, the first one, and they have to keep it indexed in order to facilitate the right to information. Next one, section 6, it allows any person seeking information under the act, they have to make a written request, whom the written request actually has to be sent to, either to the central or the state public information officer, and there they have to actually write in detail what are the specifics or the details of the information that is required, whether I need to know the salary of some person, whether I need to know what are the funds allocated for a specific scheme, or I need to know the method of what to say, selection of a particular candidate into bureaucracy, whatever it is, I need to specify the details. Next one, section 7 obligates the public information officer to provide the information, or he can reject the request for reasons specified under section 8 and 9, because this actually includes national security, defense, etc. In those cases it cannot be given to the citizen, okay, and it has to be done within 30 days of receiving the request. And section 19 actually says, if a person does not receive a decision within 30 days or is dissatisfied with the decision, then what happens? The person can further appeal to the senior officer within the same public authority. So these are the different provisions of the RTI. So who are all, or what are the stakeholders or the entities that are exempted from the RTI Act? Is that very, very important. Any information that is related to defense, national security, or personal details of a particular person, that is exempted from the disclosure. And before the RTI Act was enacted, the disclosure of the information in India was actually limited, or it was overseen by the Official Secrets Act and the other specific laws. And here the RTI Act has actually relaxed many of these restrictions, thereby enhancing more transparency as well as accountability. Now moving forward, who all are covered under RTI? Whether it includes the entire citizen of India. So here it applies throughout India. Okay, it covers all the bodies. Very important. It can be asked as an one-liner in your MCQ also. It covers all the bodies established under the Constitution, any law or government notification, including that of the non-governmental organizations that are owned, controlled, and substantially financed by the government. Any direct or indirectly controlled entity by the government, they are entitled to this particular RTI. And also all the private bodies that are owned, controlled, or substantially financed by the government, they are also directly covered under the provisions of the RTI Act. Okay. Now let us quickly see what are the challenges facing this particular RTI and finish this topic off. First one, definitely there are actually vacancy in the number of posts. Okay. So the government has been undermining the RTI Act because there has been delay in the appointing of the information commissioners. For example, if you see, 7 out of 29 information commissions have been inactive or defunct, or they have not been functional at all. This includes the state information commissions of Jharkhand, Telangana, as well as Tripura. And also there have been a number of backlogs of cases. For example, 1 lakh pending cases in Maharashtra. And even if you see, the Central Information Commission still has 8 out of 11 posts vacant, and this further delays the resolution of the cases quickly. So now this is simple, right? So vacant post as well as crumbling commitment. Next one, lack of accountability and enforcement. So even with respect to that of penalties that have been imposed by the RTI, that has also been done away with, even if they are given warrants. So here there has been lack of penalty imposed on the violations of the RTI Act. So if you see, 95% of the cases where the penalties could be imposed did not see any kind of action. So there is also non-compliance of this particular act. So this what happens, this kind of lack of accountability, this promotes a culture of impunity where there are more liberties which are actually taken in implementation of the act. So it dilutes the effectiveness of the act is what this particular article says. Next one, there have been regressive amendments. That is, one such was the 2019 amendments, which actually increased the autonomy or increased the power of the central government, whereas it actually decreased the autonomy of the Central Information Commission itself. The next one is Digital Personal Data Protection Act. This further amended the RTI Act by expanding Section 8 Clause 1 Subclause J to exempt all the personal information. It said that all personal information is actually not subjected to right to information. So this limited the scope of the implementation of RTI. So this is what the author says. Okay. Now moving forward, previously personal information could be exempted only. I told you, right? Personal information under 2005 Act was exempted only when it actually was something related to the national security, defense purposes, etc. But what happened? The amendment, that is the DP, the Data Protection Act, it exempted the personal information from the purview or for the public purview. Okay. So here, previously the personal information could, previously the personal information could only be exempted if it had no relation to the public activity or interest, or if it caused unwarranted invasion of privacy, and the new amendment removed these checks and balances, thereby diluting the rights of the citizens in knowing the personal information of the persona. Okay. Now moving forward, threats and violence against RTI activists. Okay. For example, if there are, just a second. Okay. So moving forward, the next one is threats and violence against RTI activists. You can actually see any kind of RTI activists who actually, file a petition against a particular person because they have been neglected the right to information with respect to that of particular appointment, the fund allocation, etc. What happened is that according to the Transparency International, nearly 100 people have been killed, okay, for using this RTI Act, and it has reported that thousands have been assaulted also. They are also been, threatened, and they are, they face the implications of charging in false cases on them, etc. Next one, if you see, the Whistleblowers Protection Act, this was actually passed in 2014. What was the mandate was that the person, that is a whistleblower, can actually expose the corruption, and this particular act was brought in order to safeguard the people who actually whistleblow, okay, who bring all these corruption as well as antisocial activities outside. What happened was, this particular act or legislation remains non-functional as the government has failed to operationalize it, and this lack of protection has made it dangerous for activists and ordinary citizens in order to exercise their right to information. So these are all very normal points. And the last one is, it actually has a severe implication on the democracy. So what is a democracy? For the proper functioning of the democracy, the citizens actually have to be informed about the policy regulations of the government. When that doesn't take place through the malfunctioning or the lack of implementation of the RTI Act, what happens? It actually results in or a severe impact on the democracy. Here you see estimated 6 million RTI applications actually filed annually, and it is there to ensure the transparency, right? It is a critical tool for ensuring that. However, there has been gradual erosion of the rights through administrative neglect. There has been amendments that are made for the convenience of the government. There has been violent reprisals, that is, there is a huge implications and violence that is caused against the people who actually raise their voice, etc. So an informed citizenry, that is all of us, have to be informed, and this is a prerequisite for democracy, and if that is not so, it actually undermines the proper functioning. So that is what is with the case of RTI as well. This is what the article actually talks about. And towards the conclusion, you can actually bring about a very neutral conclusion, which actually says, addressing the issues of administrative delays, also the issues of ensuring adequate as well as timely appointments, and then making proper as well as for the welfare of the people, you need to bring about amendments and not for the convenience of the government. So all that has to be taken care of, and these are the steps in order to preserve the impact that this particular law can bring towards establishing the accountability as well as transparency of the government. Because you actually have this term in your syllabus, accountability and transparency. So that can be with respect to your RTI as well. So this completes your particular discussion on right to information. So from here, your takeaway is to understand about the role of the Chief Information Commissioner, their mode of appointment, their salary, allowances, pension, tenure, etc. has to be discussed. And also you need to understand about the Information Commission as well as what kind of a body is it, whether it is a statutory body or whether it is a constitutional body, whether it is a quasi-judicial body in terms of resolution of disputes, etc. has to be understood with this particular topic. So here we have actually come to the conclusion of this particular mains topic. Now let us see if there are any question. Yeah, Varun Raj has asked, hello ma'am, do we need to remember all these sections under RTI? No, all these sections are actually not important, Varun, to remember for under the RTI. You just need to know the broader objective of this particular, what to say, of this particular act. Why this legislation was brought? It was actually brought to ensure transparency, accountability, and in order to ensure that what are the provisions that it actually provides. Okay, you just can faintly remember. Even in case you do not remember, you can write the RTI Act of 2005. It actually provides for, a public authority has to solve all this within 30 days. If not, they can appeal to the higher authority in that particular office, etc. So this is how you need to approach this particular topic. Now let's quickly move on to what is Wayanad's new X-band radar. So this particular topic becomes very, very, very important for both your prelims as well as the mains examination, because advancements in science and technology and their applications in day-to-day life, right? So this is the exact word in your syllabus. So in that way, this particular topic becomes important. And also, why this initiative was actually brought about? The Ministry of Earth Sciences has actually given a nod for establishment of this X-band radar. Why? It is because in the backdrop of the recent catastrophic landslides that has actually taken place in the Wayanad district of Kerala, what happened? There was no early warning system, okay? So there was huge loss of life and property. In order to prevent that, in order to install this particular, early warning system, the government has actually come out with such a measure, okay? So now you might have a lot of doubts, okay? So first, in order to understand this X-band radar, you need to understand what do you mean by radar. And moving forward, apart from the radar, there are actually different types of them, okay? For that, you need to actually understand what, are the different applications of this radar. That is, apart from meteorology, that is, in knowing the geophysical phenomena and the climate changes, what are all the other applications that the radar has? For these, you need to understand the functioning of the radar, for which you need to understand what do you mean by the electromagnetic spectrum. And in this electromagnetic spectrum, what are the different types of electromagnetic radiations? What do you mean by the term wavelength? What do you mean by the term frequency? Okay, so what do you mean by Doppler effect? Okay, so how does the frequency and the wavelength change with respect to Doppler effect? All this can, it actually looks very confusing, but as we move through this article, you will get your concepts cleared one by one, okay? So that you just have to, so that whenever you hear an ambulance in the future, you will know, okay, this is because of the Doppler effect. What is Doppler effect? As an ambulance actually approaches you, what happens? The sound actually increases, right? And as it recedes away, the sound actually decreases. So this is because as the ambulance approaches you, the frequency of the radiation increases. So the sound is actually more. And as it recedes away, the frequency of that particular radiation decreases. So this is called as the Doppler effect, okay? So here we'll understand and discuss about all these particular concepts so that you can apply that for your exam as well. So here we'll be knowing what do you mean by X-band radars and also the satellite spectrum, that is the electromagnetic spectrum, which has different types of electromagnetic radiation like microwaves, gamma waves, all these things, okay? Or and radio waves, etc. We will see which actually has more wavelength, which actually has shorter wavelength. I will show you the images of it, and also on how a radar actually works. And now this particular topic can actually be mapped to the science section of your prelims examination, and for your mains examination it is under GS paper 3, science and technology, developments and their applications and effects in everyday life. Now moving forward, there has been a question which has been asked in the 2011 prelims examination with respect to the method of functioning of Bluetooth and a Wi-Fi, okay, and in which frequency range it actually differs. So these are the simple kind of questions that are asked. However, we tend to, ignore such things, okay. We use Wi-Fi, we use Bluetooth on a day-to-day basis, but the the concern or the challenge is that we don't get to know or understand about the functioning. So that is what is important. So similar question has been asked in your 2011 prelims examination. Now let us get into the discussion very quickly by understanding what this news is actually talking about. So the Union Ministry of Earth Sciences recently has approved the installation of an X-band radar in Wayanad district of Kerala following the devastating floods and the landslides that has actually costed the lives of more than 200 people in the month of July 2024. Now moving forward, this is how a radar works, okay. So see, what is this? Here you basically have a transmitter, okay. So what happens is that the radio waves are actually transmitted like this towards a target object. Do you understand? When it moves towards a target object, what happens is that this radiation is actually reflected back to this particular receiver, and the time gap between the travel of this particular radio waves to the target and then getting reflected back, that helps us to calculate the distance of the object, the speed of the object, etc. So apart from sensing the objects, it can also, it can also actually predict the movement of the clouds, the movement of the storm, etc., the direction of the storm. So this is how it is actually used in surveillance of any kind of geophysical phenomena, like cloud burst, etc., and the landslides in this case, okay. So this is what is actually this picture. So if you see, there is a transmitter. This is the transmitter from where you actually have the radio waves that are emitted. It hits this particular target. Here it is actually the airplane. This gets reflected back as to the receiver, and this is the reflected wave, and that actually helps you to determine what is the distance or what is the speed at which the target is actually approaching, okay. So this is what, and this is how the radar works. Having understood the basic concept, let us quickly understand what is the radar, okay. So here radar actually stands for radio detection and ranging, and this, how does it function? It actually functions by emitting the radio waves. We saw a transmitter was there and goes towards a object or the target, and then when the waves hit the object, they bounce back, and now the receiver actually picks up the signals and the reflected signals, and this is also called as the echo. And by analyzing the time that it actually takes for a wave to return and what are all the changes in the signal, the radar systems can determine several key characteristics of this particular object, whether what is the distance at which the object is there, the size, the speed, the direction of the movement, etc. And apart from this, they are used in different industries that include aviation, meteorology, that actually involves with that of climate, etc. And it is used for military, for navigation, for law enforcement, agriculture, space exploration, etc. So radars actually have various applications. For that, you need to understand what the radar is, that you actually know here. Now moving forward, let us see what are the applications of radar in meteorology, because here we are just talking about the landslides and the heavy rainfall and the floods, right? So here let's understand. First one is called as Doppler radar. What do you mean by Doppler radar? The term is very simple. It actually works on the principle of Doppler effect. What do you mean by Doppler effect? As the object actually comes near you, the frequency of the sound waves actually increase, and as it recedes away, it decreases, okay. You would have actually learnt in your physics, right? What do you mean by Doppler effect? So let's see. In meteorology, radars are used extensively to track the weather patterns, okay. So one such type of radar is the Doppler radar, okay. So Doppler radar is nothing but works on the principle of Doppler effect. This effect is nothing but it actually talks about a change in the frequency or the wavelength of an approaching object towards a receiver. Like I am the receiver and an object is actually coming towards me. What is the change in the wavelength and the frequency of that particular target object is what is defined by the Doppler effect. First of all, this is a wave, okay. So this is actually the crust and this is the trough. So here this is actually called as the wavelength. You calculate the length of the wave. So that is actually called as the wavelength. Okay. What do you mean by frequency? The number of wave cycle, that is actually called as the frequency. Okay. So frequency is expressed as mu and wavelength is expressed as lambda, and also you must know lambda is inversely proportional to frequency. Okay, that means what? As the wavelength increases, the frequency decreases. Do you understand? So this is what it is. So here we actually saw. Now let's see a live example of how a Doppler radar actually works. For example, a cloud or a storm is moving towards the radar. The frequency of the reflected signal increases. Okay. For example, if this is a, let me clean this for you. For example, if this is a transmitter and if this is a radar, I can say, if this is a radar and if there is a cloud or the storm that is actually approaching it, what happens is that the frequency of this particular radar increases. So frequency increases. With that, what happens is that, and it as it moves away, the frequency decreases. So this actually helps not just to determine the location of the weather system, but also to determine what is the speed and the direction of movement, whether it is coming closer or moving farther away, etc. Next one is a pulse Doppler radar. Okay, pulse Doppler radar is in case of severe events like thunderstorms as well as tornadoes. What happens? This here the radio waves are actually transmitted in pulses. Okay, that is pulsating. So this is the more advanced version, that is called as a pulse Doppler radar. This emits radio waves pulses rather than a continuous stream, and this calculates the time between the emitted pulse. All the radars basically work on the same phenomena, the same basic principle on the time interval that the radio waves actually take to be reflected and to be transmitted. So this is how it is. So this actually helps to determine the intensity of the weather phenomena, such as how heavy is a particular rainfall, but also it actually talks about the movement, and this is particularly useful for predicting the severe weather events like thunderstorms, tornadoes, and even hurricanes. Okay, so this is the early warning system. So looking at the frequency of this particular radar, we can actually sense the intensity and the of the upcoming event over here. Now moving forward, let us understand what is this X-band radar that has actually been installed in Wayanad. Okay, so here there is something called as the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, so this is an electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, so this actually has, this is an electromagnetic spectrum, and this has a number of radiations. So what are the radiations? It actually differs from, it can be gamma radiation, it can be microwave, it can be X-ray, okay, it can be UV, etc. Okay, and here what happens is that each radiation actually has two ranges. Okay, one is nothing but the wavelength range, and next one is called as the frequency range. Okay, for example, if you take this microwave radiation of the electromagnetic spectrum, it has a frequency range and a wavelength range. Similarly, if you take X-ray, okay, this portion of the electromagnetic spectrum also has a wavelength range and a frequency range. So, starting over here, if you see, the wavelength will be higher, it will be more. So, the frequency is less. So, higher wavelength and lesser frequency. And as you move forward, what happens is that the wavelength is like this. The wavelength actually decreases and the frequency increases. This is something, even see, it's easier to understand Even if you don't understand, you just have to remember over here the wavelength is broad, it's more. So since wavelength is inversely proportional to the frequency, you know the frequency is less over here. And here it is actually the gamma rays where the wavelength is less, so the frequency will be more. Okay. So now this particular X band, what do you mean by X band? In that frequency range that I told you, right? In this microwave portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, it has a frequency range, and that range is actually divided into so many bands, okay, like the L band, the S band, the X band, etc. And this X band is somewhere around 8 to 12 gigahertz. So this is called as the X band. So here what happens, X-band radar actually emits the electromagnetic radiation in the X-band of this spectrum. So X-band of this spectrum, and by emitting the electromagnetic radiation over here, this particular radar functions. Okay. So I hope you actually understood what we were discussing. So now let us quickly understand what it says. So an X-band radar, it operates by emitting the electromagnetic radiation in the X band of the spectrum, specifically at frequencies between 8 to 12 gigahertz and corresponding to wavelength. So the wavelength is around 2 to 4 centimeter, which is actually very less. Okay. So when always you need to know that when the wavelength is actually very small, what happens is that the images that are produced is of a very high resolution. Okay. Do you understand? So what are they saying is this radar is particularly effective for detecting small particles such as the raindrops, the fogs, the snowflakes, etc. and other forms of precipitation due to the shorter wavelength. As we see, it is actually only 2 to 4 centimeters. And moving on, because of this, they can, produce high resolution images, and this allows them to provide a more detailed information about this weather phenomena. And the high resolution makes even more significant in order to analyze what are the localized weather events like thunderstorms, short-term rainfall, and even landslides in case of Wayanad, where small particle movements need to be tracked with utmost precision. So this is what is the X-band radar, and it actually functions. So as I told you, there are different bands in the electromagnetic spectrum. What is electromagnetic spectrum? It encompasses all types of electromagnetic radiation ranging from very long wavelengths, like the radio waves. So it starts basically with the radio waves to very short wavelengths like the gamma rays. Okay. So this is what it says. And there are different types of electromagnetic radiation, and there also I told you it is divided into bands, again based on the wavelength range or the frequency range. And here each band has unique property and it has different applications. Okay, so what are the different frequency bands here? The L band, S, C, X, K, U as well as K. This actually refers to various frequency bands of the spectrum which are primarily used in radar, satellite communication and other wireless communication systems. Okay. So here you understood what is the electromagnetic spectrum. You can see this. This is the perfect diagram that actually depicts it so that it's easier for you to understand. So here let me use this pen and see. Okay, let me use it red. Let me use red. Yeah. So if you actually see here, this is the radio waves. Okay. If you see, the wavelength is more, and as you actually go here towards the gamma rays, the wavelength is very less, and since there is decreased wavelength or lambda, there is actually increased frequency. And here you can see the radio waves. This is actually used for broadcasting radio and television because applications are also equally important. Okay. And next, moving on, the microwaves used in cooking, radar, telephone and other signals. Next is infrared. This actually transmits the heat from the sun, fires, radiators. Next is visible light. Okay. So everything that we see, it is because of this particular section of the electromagnetic spectrum. Moving on, we have the ultraviolet, which is absorbed by the skin. It is also used in fluorescent tubes. And here if you see X-rays, that is actually used to view the inside of the bodies as well as the objects. And next one is the gamma rays. It is used in medicine for killing the cancer cells. So these are different applications of the electromagnetic radiation. And also I told you within the frequency what to say, range, there are different bands. Like you have the L band here. So that is actually within 1 gigahertz. Then you have the S band, the C band, and this is the X band, and it is based, and on this only is the X band radar that is going to be installed in the landslide prone Wayanad district. Okay. So as it actually moves over here, this is towards a higher frequency, that is towards a lower frequency, and different, what to say, characteristics over here with respect to bandwidth, the antenna size, etc. It is actually seen over here. Now, let us move forward. Yeah, so these are the different, bands in the electromagnetic spectrum, where the frequency range in the L band, if you see, it is 1 to 2, whereas in S band it is 2 to 4, the wavelength is 3 to 15, and moving on here it is actually 15 to 7.5 centimeters. And then moving on, it is used for various purposes. The first one is used for GPS, mobile and satellite communication, even for aircraft surveillance. Whereas the next one is used for surface ship radars and for some kind of communication satellites, etc. Similarly, you have C band, the X band, and various communications. It's actually useful. Here it is used for satellite, here it is used for military communications. And moving over to KU band, where this establishes the direct broadcast, satellite services and different types of satellite communications. And the KA band, we have high speed, high bandwidth satellite communications. Okay. So with this, we've actually come to the conclusion of the second topic, which is for the prelims examination, which was, comparatively technical also for you to understand. Now moving on, let's move on to the last topic of discussion. Who gets the preferred symbol where there are two factions? See, let's just wrap this up very quickly. Here you just need to understand something. If there is a political party and if it is a recognized political party, what do you mean by recognized political party? It has to be registered under the Election Commission of India, and it actually has to have certain percentage of votes and also has higher, other kinds of eligibility that the unrecognized political parties don't have. What are certain eligibility criteria? That is with respect to that of their election symbols. Next one, with respect to, consultation of, setting up a particular date for the elections, etc. So such kind of, privileged parties are called as the recognized political parties. So if I am a recognized political party and inside my party there are two leaders, but they actually have opposing views and they are deciding to diverge as two different factions, who shall maintain the particular symbol that the entire party had as a unitary party? This is what is this particular article discussing about. So let's quickly get through this. Okay, so this particular article here will be discussing about the Election Commission of India, but I won't be discussing about Election Commission because you need to know what is the Election Commission. And again, the election commissioners, the chief election commissioner, the appointment tenure, whether they are eligible for reappointment or not, the pension, salaries, allowances, whether it's a constitutional body or not, all these have to be, read by you. Since, due to time constraints, we actually analyze only the article from the exam perspective. Okay, so your takeaway is to, today your homework will be to prepare on two topics. First one, you need to be ready with the Information Commission, and the second one, you need to be ready with the Election Commission of India. Okay, so other dynamic things we are discussing over here. And also we'll be discussing about the registered political parties and unrecognized political parties and these things. And here it actually forms relevance for both the prelims as well as the mains examination. For prelims, it falls under events of national and international importance, and for the mains exam under Representation of People Act of 1951. So let's quickly go through. So already there has been a question on Representation of People Act in the year 2019 mains examination, and it actually finds a direct, mention in your syllabus. So this particular topic becomes very important of discussion. So now what happens, this particular article discusses about one political party from Maharashtra, that is the Nationalist Congress Party. Okay, what happens is there are two factions inside this national political party, and each faction has actually, filed a plea in the Supreme Court preventing the other faction from inheriting the clock symbol which that can actually be used in the upcoming Maharashtra assembly elections. Okay, so here this political news is not important, but the background of it and the constitutional provision of it or the legal backing of it becomes very important for discussion for the exam. So here, what are recognized as well as registered unrecognized political parties? Here, the Election Commission of India, and mark this, Election Commission of India under Article 324 of the Indian Constitution has the authority to register the political parties which are, as outlined under Section 29A of the Representation of the People Act of 1951. Very, very, very important statement. You can even cram this up. Okay, so Election Commission under Article 324, it has the authority to register the political parties as per the Section 29A of the RPA, and for this particular registration, a particular political party must actually submit an application to the Secretary of the Election Commission of India. See, today my political party is formed, and within 1 month's time, that is 30 days, I actually have to submit an application to the Secretary of Election Commission of India for me to register as a political party. So this is what this particular statement or portion actually says. So let's see what are recognized political parties. So they are the ones that actually qualify the set eligibility criteria by the Election Commission of India. For example, they have a reserved symbol. So symbols are also of two different types. Okay, one is a reserved symbol, the next one are free symbols. Okay, so these recognized political parties enjoy the privilege of having a reserved election symbol. They have access to the electoral rolls. They also have their broadcasting timing in Doordarshan and All India Radio, etc. during the elections, and also they will have major consultations regarding the time period of the elections, etc., and fixing the dates. Okay, these are the privileges. So these parties, that is recognized parties, are classified into two, that is national parties as well as the state parties. And here also, which are all the parties become the state party and the national parties? It depends on the performance that the particular party does in the elections. And let us see what are the eligibility criteria. Very, very important again for the examination. So I'm not sure if this will be visible in your screen, but let me actually read out to you point by point so that you know. So first one, let us actually take into consideration a national party. So for your party to be formed as a national party, it has to satisfy certain eligibility criteria. First thing, this particular party must actually receive at least 6% of the total votes in 4 or more states in the recent Lok Sabha or the assembly elections, and the party should have minimum of 4 MPs from the last Lok Sabha election. So this takes into consideration the current performance and number of MPs from the previous performance of the party. Next one, if the party is recognized as a state party in 4 or more states, so then it is actually one of the criteria to actually be a national party. Next one, if the party secures at least 2% of the total Lok Sabha seats from 3 or more states. These are some points that you need to cram up. Okay, there's no way in understanding it logically and all. You just need to memorize it. So these are the criteria for a party to be a national party. Next one, criteria for the state party. This also should have secured 6% of the valid votes polled in the state at the general election to respective state legislature, and also it wins 2 seats in the same state elections. The next one is it secures 6% of the total valid votes in the state at the general election to the Lok Sabha and also wins 1 seat in the Lok Sabha from the same state. Next, if it wins 3% of the seats in the Legislative Assembly at the general election to Legislative Assembly of state concerned, or 3 seats in the Assembly, whichever is more. Next one, if it wins 1 seat in the Lok Sabha for every 25 seats or any kind of fraction thereof allotted to this particular state at a general election to the Lok Sabha from the state concerned. See, all these things have to be memorized. Okay, so here I can just tell you that these are recognized parties. These are classified into two. One is the state, one is the national. There are 3 criteria under which a party can become a recognized national party. or it can be a state party. Next one, it can be a state party if it secures 8% of the total valid votes polled at the state and general elections to the Lok Sabha from the state or the state legislative assembly. Important, but what to say, little bit static. You need to have concentration and you need to cram this up. Now moving forward, let us see. We actually saw what are recognized parties, but there are certain parties which are registered with the Election Commission of India, but they are not recognized. Who are they? These are nothing but newly formed parties, that is newly registered parties over here. Parties that have not secured enough votes to qualify as a state or a national party, or the parties that have not participated in the election since the registration. And these parties do not receive any kind of benefits that the recognized parties actually enjoy, and a party becomes a recognized state or national party based on meeting specific criteria. This we've already seen what it is, okay? Now moving forward, how are symbols allotted to the political party? Actually, this is the news, okay? But we have discussed what is the procedure under which the Election Commission of India registers a particular political party, and we've actually seen what are recognized parties, the two types, that is national as well as state, and what are the eligibility criteria for each party, that is the national as well as the state. Now moving forward, registered, we saw registered but unrecognized, which actually do not have any kind of privileges or benefits. Now moving forward, we need to see how are symbols allotted to the political parties. Here, the Election Commission of India allocates the symbols through one particular order. What is that order? It is the Election Symbols Reservation and Allotment Order of 1968, Symbols Order, okay? That is Election Symbols Order 1968. What are the key provisions of this is that according to this order, there are two types of symbols. I told you one is the reserved symbol, next one is the free symbols. Reserved symbols are those which are actually allotted for the registered recognized parties, which are national and state parties. In case if there is a split, that is this current article was talking about, right? In case if there is a split of recognized political party, that actually happened recently in Tamil Nadu also. The AIADMK actually broke into two factions, right? Under Edapadi Palanisamy as well as the opposition party, that is the OPS, O Selvam. So here you need to know, in case of a split, then which party should actually take the symbol, whether the decision taken by the Election Commission is binding or not. That is very important. So in case of split of a recognized political party, para 15 of the symbols order, this empowers the Election Commission to decide. So Election Commission has 100% authority to decide which political party or which faction of the political party shall take up that particular symbol. And the Election Commission will decide on the issue after considering all the available facts, the historical facts and the circumstances of the case, depending on case to case basis, hearing their representatives as well as representation. So this is how it is actually given. And if you see, the decision of the Election Commission of India is binding on all such rival sections or factions or the groups. In case of splits of the registered but unrecognized parties, what happens? The ECI generally advises both the factions to resolve the differences internally or to approach the court. Okay, only in cases of recognized political party, the Election Commission's decision actually holds to be paramount. Okay, now moving on. These are the registered symbols, reserved symbols. What do you mean by free symbols? They are allocated to registered unrecognized parties based on their application to the Election Commission of India, and common symbols are provided to RUPPs, that is reserved, registered but unrecognized parties based upon their undertaking that they would put up at least 5% of the total candidates with regard to the said legislative assembly election of a particular state. Yeah. So with this, we've actually come to the end of it, end of the discussion of three important topics that we've actually taken for the prelims as well as mains examination. Let's quickly get through the questions as well. The Doppler effect, which is used in meteorology and the satellite communication, refers to. Obviously, I told you it refers to the change in the frequency, right? As well as the wavelength of the object or the target object actually coming towards a receiver or an observer. So change, what is it? Let's see. Let's see from the last. Reflection of radar signals from electrically charged layers. No, wrong. Absorption of radio waves by water vapor on the Earth's atmosphere. Wrong again. Scattering of electromagnetic waves by particles in the atmosphere. Again, wrong. So obviously one should be right. However, we'll read change in the wave frequency relative to the observer when the source is moving. Very, very important. So yes, so the answer will be option A. Now moving to the second prelims question with reference to the allocation of symbols to political parties, consider the following statements. Let's see what is the first statement. Reserved symbols are allocated to the recognized national parties while free symbols are allocated to recognized state parties. No. Here reserved symbols are actually given to the recognized parties whether it is actually the national party or the state party. In case of split, the decision of the Election Commission of India is final regarding the allocation. Yes, this is correct. Since only statement 2 is correct, here your answer will be option B. Okay. So moving forward, now let us actually solve the mains practice question is with respect to that of right to information. The question reads, how far has this particular legislation of Right to Information Act of 2005 has been successful in bringing transparency and accountability in the functioning of the government? It talks about highlight the key challenges that we spoke on, how are the vacancies, there are, piling up of cases, and then even, during declaration of warrant, there has been no penalties that is actually taking up, etc. And now you need to suggest the measures for improvement. Okay. So here as such, see next time in the analysis that I'll be coming up in, for GS paper 3, with respect to geography and environment and ecology, I will teach you how to approach an answer in detail. Okay. So stay tuned for that session. But over here, I'll just tell you any answer, you just have to break it into 3 parts, that is introduction, body, as well as the conclusion. In the introduction, we need to talk about how RTI has significantly enhanced the transparency and accountability in the functioning of the government. And in the body, we need to talk about, successes, how many, RTI applications have been processed and how much have been successful. However, it has actually exposed the antisocial events like corruption, etc. What are the different challenges that it actually faces? Okay, like vacant posts, there have been amendments that have been made by 2019 amendment as well as the data protection act. And then also we need to talk about the measurements for improvement, that is strengthening the commission, increasing the autonomy of the commission, safeguarding the activists, okay, who actually deal with this right to information, as well as revising the amendments in order to increase the efficiency of the act and not just for the mere convenience of the government. So that also has to be discussed over here. And towards the conclusion, we need to actually discuss about, by addressing all the aforesaid or aforementioned challenges, RTI Act can continue to serve as a powerful tool for promoting transparency and accountability in governance, thereby strengthening India's democracy. Okay, so this is what is all the discussion of today is all about. So we've actually come to the conclusion of our daily news analysis section or session. So I hope all of you actually enjoyed, learning thoroughly or comprehensively 3 most important topics that have appeared in the paper today. So for more such live sessions as well as, effective and good interactions, please do stay tuned by liking, sharing and subscribing to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. We'll meet you soon with your GS Paper 3 analysis. Thank you and meet you soon. Hmm.